When you look at the Atlantic Division standings so far, and yes, it's super early, but it's not going to be as cut and dry as we thought it was going to be, and the Bruins might have a real chance to make some noise.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Tuesday, October 14th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine, your first listen, in fact. And we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. On today's podcast, we are going to do the first installment of the Atlantic Division Power Rankings, looking at the bottom four teams, the top four teams, and where the Boston Bruins rank among them. We'll also name our Bruin of the day and look back a bit again at yesterday's game and the impression that David Pastrňák made late in it by saving a goal, literally, with his skate. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 20 years now. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Bruins lost yesterday. I went on YouTube live afterwards to break it down and talked about how this team just feels a bit different than last year, in that how many times last season did we see them go down by a couple goals and then the game just got well away from them and the end result was 8-1, 7-1, 6-1. Yesterday, however, they showed a great amount of resilience and were able to erase the 3-goal deficit early on. Weren't quite able to catch up, obviously, losing 4-3. But they kept fighting until the very end, including an incredible effort by David Pastrňák to save an empty net goal and give his team a chance to score at the other end of the ice. We'll talk about that later on. Altogether, it gives the Bruins a 3-1-0 start to the season. And today we're looking at the Atlantic Division Power Rankings. It's incredibly early, and yes, they've played games against a couple bottom tier teams in the NHL in the Chicago Blackhawks and the Buffalo Sabres. They also did beat the Washington Capitals, giving them their only loss so far this season. And again, showed a tremendous amount of fight against a Tampa Bay Lightning team that was kind of desperate for their first win. They had dropped 2 in a row to begin the season, and that team's just too good to not win one of their first handful of games. But let's start here at the bottom of the Atlantic. This is where the Bruins, many projected to finish once again. And by all accounts, it's once again going to be the Buffalo Sabres. They have just been dreadful to begin this season, including a loss to our Boston Bruins on Saturday. They're 0-3. They have a -8 goal differential. They've managed only 2 goals through 3 games, and they have allowed 10. And it's getting to the point here where we're going to see Rasmus Dahlin, Tage Thompson just wanting out. The Sabres were booed off the ice when they were shut out in Thursday's home opener. On Monday, fire Adams, meaning Kevin Adams, the general manager. Those chants were echoing throughout KeyBank Center. A fan threw a jersey on the ice. And Captain Rasmus Dahlin clearly frustrated, saying it's not good enough. A lot of the areas, not good power play, not good PK, not good goaltending, just can't catch a break. We got to get out of this BS. We have to step up. This is not acceptable. Tage Thompson echoed that. He's saying it's not over. It's only 3 games. They're obviously in a hole they don't want to be in, but they've missed the playoffs in 14 consecutive seasons. They can't afford to do that once again. And we talk about the Bruins bottoming out last year and how bad things are. Fired Don Sweeney, blah, blah, blah. Like, the alternative here, an active teardown and attempted rebuild, you could drop down to where the Buffalo Sabres are, not making the playoffs in 14 straight years. That's just insane. And so far, right now, they're not convincing anybody that they are going to be not in the basement of the Atlantic Division. In 5, 6, 7 right now, there's a trio of teams, each with 1 and 2 records. You have the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Leafs won their home opener or their season opener against the Montreal Canadiens. Then they went out and dropped 2 in a row to the Detroit Red Wings. The Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, earned their first win Sunday against our Boston Bruins. But prior to that, they had coughed up a huge lead on opening night to the Ottawa Senators, and then they lost to the New Jersey Devils. They'll be back in action tonight against the Capitals, another tough test. The Senators, they had that comeback win over Tampa, but since they have dropped games to the who'd they lose to yesterday? To the Nashville Predators by a score of 4-1, and they lost to Florida prior to that by a score of 6-2. And this despite Shane Pinto being named one of the NHL's Stars of the Week. So Buffalo is firmly in the basement. Ottawa, I'm putting in 7th. They are 1-2, tied with Toronto and Tampa, but they have a -6 goal differential. They've lost 2 in a row after winning the season opener. You have Toronto, who's lost 2 in a row, so I'm putting them in 6th, despite the fact they have a slightly better goal differential than the Lightning. Toronto's -1, Tampa's -2. So right now, Buffalo in 8th, Ottawa in 7th, Tampa Bay in 6th, and Toronto in 5th. Those are 2 or 3 teams that were in the top 4 last season that are struggling early on. And teams like Detroit and Boston have been taking advantage and racking up some points to jump up into the top 4 at the moment. Again, a caveat. It's extremely early, way too early to be making any conclusions, any definitive statements about the standings or teams' success or lack thereof coming up this season. But you got to play the games, you got to win them, and the Bruins have done enough to warrant a spot in the top 4 this week. And we'll discuss exactly where they fit here as the podcast continues. The NFL season is well underway, as is the NHL and Major League Baseball playoffs. NBA coming up again just in a couple weeks. And FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, folks. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching sports even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action, and there's something for everybody here. You can build parlays, you can try player props, futures, or just follow the live lines during games. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. Put down a $5 bet, and if it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. We're breaking down the very early, perhaps way too early, Atlantic Division power rankings here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. In fourth this week, I'm putting the Detroit Red Wings. They're 2-1. They've come off 2 impressive wins over the Toronto Maple Leafs. I should mention the Maple Leafs, they're expected to still be pretty good this season, but you can't just subtract a guy like Mitch Marner and expect everything to continue to function at the same level. And we've already got Craig Berube calling out William Nylander, even though he's a point-per-game player, for not doing enough in Marner's absence. So, you lose a guy like that, you expect some growing pains as guys figure out their roles or get increased defensive attention. And not to say the Leafs are going to drop all the way out of a playoff spot, but there are going to be some moments where they will miss Mitch Marner. The Red Wings, on the other hand, took advantage of that. They're 2-1, an even 0 goal differential. So I'm putting them right now in fourth place. In third, I'm putting the Montreal Canadiens. They are 2-1 to begin the season. They lost that season opener to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they've bounced back with a couple wins. And this is a team that is pretty deep and able to beat you so many different ways offensively, for sure. They beat Detroit 5-1. They beat Chicago by a score of 3-2. And if you look at their stat line, you see how dangerous they can be. Nick Suzuki leads the way with 5 points. Then you have Zach Bolduc, who is somehow made available by the St. Louis Blues, Cole Caulfield, Brendan Gallagher, Oliver Kapanen. They haven't even really got much this season so far out of Ivan Demidov, 1 point, Lane Hudson, 1 point, Kirby Dach, Noah Dobson, Juraj Slafkovsky, all with 1 point each. Once those guys come alive, this will be a very difficult team, and I expect them to remain in the top 4 for the balance of the season. Rivalry aside, I'm very high on the Montreal Canadiens so far this season. That brings us to second place, and there I am putting our Boston Bruins. They have a record of 3-1. They have a goal differential of +4, 13 goals for, 9 against. Those 9 goals is second fewest in the Atlantic. Only the Canadiens have allowed fewer. They've played 1 fewer game, but when it comes to scoring right now for the Bruins, they've been able to put the puck in the net at a more efficient rate than we expected. And they're proving early on, again, not to just be a one-line team. In fact, they're led in scoring by David Pastrňák, who's only got 1 goal through 4 games, but 5 total points, tied with second-line left winger Pavel Zacha with 5 points. In fact, only 3 Bruins have yet to record a point this season. Mason Lohrei, Marat Husnudinov, and Hampus Lindholm, who's only been able to play in 1 and a bit games. We're getting contributions up and down the lineup. Goal leaders right now are Elias Lindholm with 2, Morgan Geekie with 2, Casey Middlestat with 2. So scoring from both lines on the top 6. And what is encouraging about the Boston Bruins is the fact that, their penalty kill is proving to be much improved. The power play as well under head coach Steve Spott. And as we'll discuss coming up later on, they feel a bit more cohesive than they did last season. Offensively, still kind of middle of the pack, 3.25 goals per game, ranks them 14th. Defensively, they are allowing only 2.25 goals against, which ranks them 7th in that category. On the power play, last year they were one of the worst teams. They're still only 23rd, but 12.5%. What's really improved for this team is the penalty kill. They're one of only 4 teams with a perfect penalty kill so far this season. And that is just truly remarkable considering how bad they were on the penalty kill last year. Shots on goal, they're 13th, 4. They're still allowing probably too many shots. 26.3. Actually, that's good for 26th in the NHL, going from up to down. So if you're looking at fewest goals allowed per game, the Bruins are 7th right now. They have had some success on the power play. And if you look at their PDO, which is looking at the shooting percentage, save percentage, 5-on-5, right now they are below 100, 958, an 87.67 save percentage. And a lot of that comes down to Joonas Korpisalo's performance yesterday. Now, he was hung out to dry often. He's only got an 851 save percentage so far this season, 7 goals on 47 shots. Jeremy Swayman has a 966 save percentage. I probably would have gone with Swayman yesterday, considering you have 2 days off prior to the game coming up Thursday against the Vegas Golden Knights. I would have given Swayman the start against a very good Tampa Bay Lightning team. 2 days off, put him in there against Vegas, and then I guess put Korpisalo in against Colorado, with Swayman going back for the game against Utah on Sunday. That would have given him, 6 of the first... no, not 6. That would have given him 5 of the first 7 games, but I mean, whatever. I think that is the kind of split that we need. We don't need a back-to-back here for the Bruins. So if there's one kind of miscue or misstep by Marco Sturm, Bob Essencer early on, it was going with that tandem. Swayman was coming off solid games against Washington, Buffalo, throw him back in there against Tampa Bay. There's no reason to not have him start that game, especially with 2 days off prior to the game against the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Bruins right now, I'm putting in second. They have a tie for the best record in the Atlantic with the Florida Panthers, but we're giving Florida the edge because they are, of course, the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and they're playing without guys like Alexander Barkov and also Matthew Tkachuk, both of whom are injured. Now, they did lose last night to Philadelphia, so you could make an argument that the Bruins belong in that first place spot. They've only beaten right now Chicago, Philly, Ottawa, and then they lost to Philly last night. The Bruins also have a better goal differential, +3 compared to +4. All of Florida's wins have come at home as well. They've yet to win on the road. But of course, they get the benefit of the doubt because they are reigning Stanley Cup champions. So right now we're going top to bottom: Florida, Boston, Montreal, Detroit, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Ottawa, Buffalo. I don't see Buffalo getting out of that last place spot, which is great news for the Bruins because that's just one less team to have to compete with. I do think the Bruins are hitting a bit different so far this season. Got to some debates on X over the weekend based on a post I made about fewer distractions this year with Brad Marchand Jim Montgomery, those situations. I'm going to touch on that, as well as Pastrňák, according to Marco Sturm, being the clear leader of this team despite having an A and not a C. We'll touch on all that here as the podcast continues. Most people don't have a handle on all their financials if you were to ask them just point blank. How's your situation here? Whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, people don't really know all their accounts and what they're worth. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting, where you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. For the record, Brad Marchand was one of my favorite Boston Bruins of all time, and he was indeed a stellar captain for this team. He set the example on and off the ice, and he was not the reason why the Boston Bruins were bad last season. Having said that, you cannot argue, in my mind, that his contract status, his long-term questionable future with the club, along with Jim Montgomery being replaced, you can't say those helped last season. So when I went on X and said it's almost as if the uncertain future of the captain and a coaching change were a hindrance to the Bruins, it was screen grabbed, it was mocked, but I don't think that's really a stretch. Like, any team, if you have your captain who may or may not be with the team long term, while bringing in a couple guys who you have signed long term, who will be here for the foreseeable future, wondering what their place is on the team, where they fit within the locker room hierarchy, and then it culminates in a trade. Obviously, that was a bit of a hindrance last season. And of course, his subtraction from the team, along with Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle, that led to the prolonged losing streak to end the season. So I'm not blaming Brad Marchand. Like, it's possible to have some gray areas. It's not just black and white. It's not Marchand was the problem or he absolutely had to finish his career in black and gold. Both, it can be somewhere in the middle, right? And that's all I was trying to say. Can you say that his contract status last year and Jim Montgomery being fired helped the Bruins? I don't think so. So is it fair to say that it was somewhat of a hindrance? I mean, that's pretty innocuous. And to say that it's almost on the same level as arguing that he was the problem, like, come on, that's a bit of a stretch. Which brings us to our Bruin of the day, who is David Pastrňák. And after yesterday's game, Marco Sturm said he is our leader. He does everything, and he wants to win. He was good on the bench, does everything right. They weren't able to score on the power play, 0 for 5. That was a big problem in the game against Tampa. They did not come up big in that moment, especially late when they were trying to go for the equalizer. But it could have been iced by the Lightning were it not for an unreal effort by David Pastrňák to get back and not only, just kind of get in the way, blocking a Brandon Hagel shot like right in the crease, playing goaltender basically to allow the puck to go down to the other end of the ice where the Bruins were able to draw 2 penalties to end the game, unable to end it. But, he was coming off or watching Nikita Zadorov just crush Nikita Kucherov. And then he was able to snuff out that Hagel scoring chance. Morgan Geekie said after, you see it up and down the lineup. When your best player is doing that kind of stuff, it's easy to buy in. And it leads to a chance in the Tampa end. They get a 5-on-3 out of it. Was such a great save. They wished they could have put one in for him. But it kind of shows right now just how important David Pastrňák is to this team, not just offensively. Again, he's only got 1 goal, despite the fact they're 3-1, but just that calm presence and that extra effort he put in to give his team a chance in the 4th game of the regular season. Casey Middlestat said, it starts with our leaders. They're trying to set a new standard. A lot of roster turnover, some new guys coming in. Pasta down the stretch last season was one of the best players in the NHL, despite the fact it was clearly a white flag waved on the season, a new chapter for the franchise. Pasta, Middlestat said, playing goalie, taking runs at guys, getting physical, makes it easy for the rest of the team to get up and play at that level. Charlie McAvoy as well, a warrior out there. Middlestat said, just a matter of following those guys, and they did a heck of a job. We are the Boston Bruins, he said. He's a new guy. He's played against it plenty of times. He knows what it's like to face the Bruins. He's taken pride in being a Bruin, keep fighting to the very end, and nobody exemplified that better yesterday than David Pastrňák. And that's why he is today's Bruin of the day, likely going to be the Bruin of the day multiple times this season because of his offensive efforts. But for him to be out there making that play in the 4th game of the regular season on a Monday afternoon, it shows the commitment that he has to this team. For me, he should be the de facto captain. He should be the captain. I've argued that several times, despite, bold take that maybe it should be Zadorov. It's a natural progression from Chara, Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrňák. They didn't just want to hand it to him. They needed someone to step up and earn it. And he's certainly doing that at this time. And he should be in consideration for captain. Maybe they're committed to going all season without one, but why? Just give him the seat. Anyways, that is it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. Super early. We can't yet say the Bruins are different, but when you compare how the season ended to how this season has begun, the vibes are clearly different. There's more buy-in. There's more cohesiveness among the guys in the locker room. We're seeing some scoring up and down the lineup. We're seeing extra efforts on defense, more physicality, more discipline. Nikita Zadorov leveling guys, but I believe he's only got 1 penalty so far, which is a miracle in and of itself. We're seeing Jeremy Swayman playing at a high level. I think he should have been in there yesterday. And this road trip coming up is going to be a huge test. Vegas, Colorado, Utah. They're heading to Vegas today. They're going to have a couple days of bonding. So stay safe, everybody out there. Hopefully it's, a nice trip to the Hoover Dam instead of a night at the roulette tables just to stay fresh. But whatever they're up to, I hope they have a good time. And these road trips are really good for bonding and bringing guys together to become an even tighter group. Their family, like Sturm said the other day, and really seems to be more cohesive vibes than there were last season. Yes, the roster is not perfect. There are holes, but there's something to be said for that everybody kind of being on the same page, having a clear hierarchy in the locker room, everybody knowing their role, looking up to David Pastrňák, Charlie McAvoy, Nikita Zadorov. Hopefully Hampus Lindholm can get back in there soon, and we can see the Bruins at full going. But honorary mention of Bruin of the day to Jordan Harris, scored his first goal in fine fashion yesterday. That's it for today's episode, friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please do check out the Locked On NHL Game Night podcast next. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Local analysis on a national scale. You can find it on Locked On NHL's YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please do subscribe to this podcast as well on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not done so already. Please take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.